What is going on, guys? It's Jake. We're back in for another YouTube video, and as you can see, I have the long-awaited custom catch can here for the 2005 Subaru Forester engine that we're building. Super excited to get my hands on this thing. This was actually made by a company called Strictly Modified. So there are several reasons why this thing is custom, and we'll get into it in a bit. But I really wanted to take this video and use it as an opportunity to talk about a air oil separator versus a catch can, and kind of why I chose to go with the catch can over the air oil separator for my circumstances. So let's go ahead and get right into it. I'd say 90 to 95% of you guys watching are gonna wanna go with an air oil separator, and that is just because it is less maintenance and you won't have as hard of an install. And when I say that, I mean most catch can setups are pretty much custom, and they're not really a plug and play kind of slap it on deal. You're gonna have to make other modifications to kind of make your catch can work. Now your air oil separator, depending on the company and what they send you, most of the good air oil separators will come with all the hoses, wire ties, or worm gear clamps that you're gonna need to install it on the engine, as well as a PDF file online where they will tell you exactly which hoses go where and all that good stuff. So now we can talk about what an air oil separator actually does, and it basically uses centrifugal force to pull the condensation and oil out of your engine through the main PCV and the valve cover breathers, and then it goes through a chamber where the air and the oil are separated, and the oil then returns back into the engine in most cases, and the condensation does not, which is always what you want. Now, depending on the brand you get, it's gonna have coolant flowing through them, so it's gonna add extra lines in the engine bay, and this is one of the big downsides, in my opinion, as to why I went with the catch can setup. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with an air oil separator. It's actually probably a better option than a catch can in most cases because of the install. It's gonna be a little bit easier. So now we can talk about the catch can setup. So this, like I said, is made by Strictly Modified, and what I have here is 3 ports, and I will get you guys a close-up here in a second as to where they go on the engine and what lines will hook up to them. But what we have is a 8AN on each side, and we have a 3/8 MPT bung welded in each side. So that way, if I ever wanted to change fittings down the road, I could unscrew it and then screw a new fitting in. In most cases, you see people just weld the actual AN fitting into the catch can, and I guess if you know you're never gonna change up your fittings, then that would be a great option. But it's always cool to be able to have that option in the future if you wanted to do something and switch it up. So we got 2 8ANs on each side, and then we have a 12AN in the center using a 1/2" MPT. And the reason why the one in the center is bigger is because it's going to be coming off of the main PCV valve on the middle of the engine block, and that is going to be where the most of the blow-by is going to be pushed out of the engine through the hose into the catch can. So those of you guys who have emptied a catch can, you have seen how it's a little bit of a milky oil consistency, and that is because the condensation that your engine produces as well as the oil is mixed together in the catch can, and that is why we want to always keep an eye on this thing and drain it probably, you know, depending on how hard you drive the car, maybe weekly, maybe monthly. But yeah, that's exactly what this is for. As far as an air oil separator, like I said, it'll separate that and keep your oil in the actual engine. But as long as you're up to date with your services and you keep an eye on your oil level and you're not beating the car on E85 daily for 3 months straight, you should be fine with your catch can. So it's really nice that this thing is custom for my setup. Trying to find something like this with all 3 of these AN fittings in these locations with this size is just, it's extremely difficult. So if you guys are looking for something like this, then you can hit up Strictly Modified, and they'll get you straight. You can probably tell them you want 4 ports, whatever you want, they'd probably go ahead and do it for you. So hit them up. And now let's go ahead and show you guys where this thing's gonna hopefully sit and the lines that are gonna go to it. So here, let's get right into it. So as far as installing this thing on the engine, it will actually require a custom bracket, because obviously this is custom and it wasn't necessarily made for Subaru specifically, although that's what we're gonna be using it on. So we're gonna have some type of bracketry, but the goal is right here on our main PCV valve fitting right there coming off the block. That is a 12 AN, as well as our front fitting on this catch can. So basically it's going to be sitting right around this general area on the bracket, supported maybe from the dog bone mount on the chassis of the car. But basically we'll have a line coming straight up from this, hitting a 90-degree fitting straight into the catch can, so that way it won't have far to travel. And then as far as our side ones, so over here on the valve covers, you see that fitting right there that is not being used currently. That is a 8 AN fitting. And if you guys missed when we put those fittings in the breathers, be sure to go check out the video. I'll put it up in the corner. But that is one of our valve cover breathers, and we have another one over here on this side. So those will be routed through the TGV out to each side of the catch can. And I'm pretty sure this will really clean up the engine bay. Rather than having all those hoses going to the air oil separator, we only have these 3 hoses in the engine bay, and they're all AN braided fittings, so we won't have to worry about, you know, most of our hoses being these rubber heater hose kind of hoses. And also we won't have to worry about running any coolant lines into our catch can like we would have to with a air oil separator. So since we completely did away with the coolant expansion tank that usually sits about here, what would typically happen with your air oil separator is there would be more hard lines on top of this engine, and this hose coming off the water pump would eventually make its way up to your coolant expansion tank. Then it would come out of your coolant expansion tank, go over through your air oil separator, back over into the turbo, back through the turbo, down to this side of the engine for the drain. But obviously, since we don't have a coolant expansion tank and we aren't running an air oil separator, we are gonna delete a lot of lines that we would otherwise be using. So super happy about that, and I'm really sure that it'll go right along with the build and keep everything just as clean as we want it to be. So yeah guys, this is kind of gonna wrap up the video here for today. Hope I did a pretty good job explaining catch can versus air oil separator. It's kind of dependent on your setup and where you are modifying the car. I'd say for most high horsepower cars, you could really do either, but I would go with a catch can just because it cleans up the engine bay in my opinion. But do what you want. Either one will work and you'll be fine, because I've seen cars with 1,000+ horsepower running air oil separators. So this is not something you need. This is just what I decided to go with on my build. So I got to get this thing to powder coat. I'll see you guys in the next video. Be sure to drop a like, hit that subscribe button if I helped you out, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.